We are very privileged. This is definitely an exclusive for the BSSA. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. So there was a couple of people last time who hadn't clicked on the speaker view. I assume that when I click on share screen, that your whole screen, you're actually going to see everything there rather than everyone's faces. If you don't, send me a little message down the bottom and I'll try and work out, or potentially Chris may be able to work out if there's a speaker view or something, but I'm almost certain when I share the screen through Zoom, everybody sees it. So I'm going to do that right now. Mike, thank you for taking your time to take us through your bird room and setup. I'm sure everyone's appreciating it, sitting back here in their living rooms in Australia. I thought we'd ask you a few questions if we can. Why don't we start off with, how did you get into budgerigars and how did you get hooked?
Breeding birds since I was 15. I was a little bit of a hooligan, so I just needed a hobby, and it was budgies.
Mike's asked me to give you an overview today about his time in the budgie hobby. Mike's been breeding birds for about 45 years. He's had a number of breaks in between, but he came back with a passion in 2003. He'd already bred some really good birds in the late 80s and 90s and had had some reasonable success on the show bench. He won Best in Show at the North Downs show. So when he came back in early 2003, his first objective was to get an idea of the types of birds that were out there at the time. He had an idea of the frame he wanted on the birds, which he thinks is an essential part of budgie breeding. And then he planned to add the feather, or the coat as he calls it. When he came into the hobby again in 2003, he visited a number of breeders to look at the style of birds and what they were looking like generally. And he knew from the visits that he'd done that he really wanted to buy birds from Harry Hockaday. Harry had a real solid reputation for being fair and honest, and Harry gave Mike a really great start with the kind of birds that he let him have. He had 4 hens and 2 cockbirds, and for the first time ever, Mike left the bird room with money in his pocket. Quite a novelty in the Ball family. One of the hens that Mike got from Harry was the foundation of his success, breeding 32 babies for him, and Harry and Mike remain really good friends to this day. He then added some birds from Gerald Binks, who recently imported some birds from Reinhardt Malcantine in South Africa. The Malcantine birds had a really big frame to them, and from there Mike began to develop his vision of the ideal budgerigar. In particular, he bought a cinnamon light green cock from Gerald that really propelled him forward in the vision of the bird that he wanted to create. Mike visited 2 studs early on his return that left a really profound impression on him. The first was Terry Pilkington in 2003, and the second was Daniel Retoff in 2006. Their birds had great style, and there was a massive depth of quality across the board. It was the consistency that Mike found in both studs that really left an impression on him. Daniel's birds were similar to the South African birds, but they had more width. As Mike walked out of both bird rooms, instead of being envious of what he saw, it really fueled his enthusiasm and added clarity to the type of bird that Mike knew he really wanted to breed. When Mike started buying birds from Daniel, he thought they needed a little bit more blow and lift. And it was a combination of the blow and lift and the body frame that he started to breed his own style of bird. Mike's cinnamon line just keeps getting better and better and better in quality year after year. After 45 years, he's coming to the end of his time in the hobby. But he has some advice for anyone starting out, and these are the 3 L's. Look, listen, and learn. Mike believes that developing a good eye for a bird is essential, and he would encourage beginners not to buy from the bigger, well-known studs, but to select a few good smaller breeders and buy well-bred birds from these studs. Mike believes that you should also handle the birds before you buy them, get a feel for them, and also make sure that the birds are as healthy as they can be. Mike has 5- and 6-year-old cocks here that are still breeding. When looking at a stud, look at the bottom end of the birds as well, and if they're decent, try and begin a relationship with that breeder and then start to build your own stud of birds. It's really hard work, but boy, is it rewarding. When Mike pairs up, it's generally visually. He always tries to balance pairs out, but he does keep a few pairs going that he breeds to maintain the longer feathers. He can dip in and out when he needs to. He often pairs cinnamon to cinnamon and spangle to spangle. He gets criticised for it, but he always says it's about the bird and it's about the feather. Primarily, the budgies have always been a hobby for me and for Mike, and he doesn't sell a lot of birds, but gets a lot of criticism for that. He breeds the type of birds that he wants to look at, and Mike thinks that a sad development in the hobby is the rise of professional breeders. For him, it's always been just a hobby. Mike, as most people have, has made a huge number of mistakes in not isolating the outcrosses that he brings in, particularly during the breeding season, and he believes that this is part of the reason that it triggers French molt in birds. In 2015, he lost about 60 of his best birds, adults, and some super babies that he bred due to a virus because he didn't quarantine the birds that he brought in. Last year, he had the opportunity to buy some of Harry Hockady's birds, but he ended up with a lot of French mould, and again, he puts this down to not quarantining the birds fully when he brought them in. Both times he admits it was his fault. It's a learning curve, and Mike's quite impatient. Mike has a real issue with dust. He believes that many breeders now, with the sort of not breeding and the outside flights anymore, extraction is absolutely paramount in the bird room. Mike thinks that dust is a real killer, not only to the birds, but also to us as well. He's 100% convinced that the dust is the reason that the FM virus carries around the bird room, as well as other bacteria as well. Mike thinks it's essential that you clean your bird room regularly. He does his weekly, from top to bottom. He hoovers every day, and he wipes the walls down. All of this plays a part in minimising the dust. He uses dust-free bedding, horse breeding bedding is readily available in every country in the world. But other problems that also contribute to the disease and the virus is overcrowding and mites, and keeping both under control is key to success. I'm sure that in, not only the UK, but in other parts of the world, trying to get youngsters interested in the hobby is key. It's a tough job, and we need to take responsibility and support the youngsters where we can. At the end of the day, they are the future of this hobby.
It's very interesting. Mike, can you tell us, with the breeding cabinets that you have, I believe it was 48, what sort of proportion of cocks and hens would you run to fill those cabinets?
Right, as regards to pairing up, I've got 50 breeding pairs up at the minute. I did last year have 80 pairs, but boy, that was hard work, and I would keep around 3 hens to every cock bird.
Fair enough. Mike, one of the things we learned last month, it's not something that's really big here in Australia, but I did obviously see it over in the US. Some people are giving their birds a siesta in the middle of the day, the breeding cabinets. I wondered what your artificial lighting program was like. What time do the lights come on? When do they go off? And do you have that break in the middle of the day for the birds?
Right, I have artificial lighting on from 6:30 in the morning till 11:30. Then the lights come back on at 3 o'clock, and they're switched off at 9:30, so I would say approximately 8 hours of artificial lighting. I only have LED lights in my bird room, and I've never had any other form of lighting on my birds at all.
Right, and how long roughly would you spend in the bird room each day, Mike?
In there in the morning, obviously looking at if there's any hatchlings and things, and obviously if everything is okay, I then go back in around after lunch and have a look, and then I would say my evening routine is about 2.5 hours in the budget aviary. I mean, at the end of the day, for me, it's only a hobby. So I don't. I actually found last year with having 80 pairs that it became a chore actually.
Mike, we hear lots of talk about feeding the feather. I'm sure there's a lot of people here tonight interested to hear about your feeding regime, what you do to feed that feather to get these enormous budgerigars. Wondering if you can share it with us.
I feed Vertilagus, as it's the best on the market, or I think it is. As regards all the additives, I do feed Aviary Smart and extras, and I also put a calcium supplement in the water, and I also feed an egg food if babies are hatching, but I don't really overdo it.
Mike likes to chop things up a bit, so one night he will feed soaked oats, another night he will feed sprouted seeds that he's done. This is done in the water, and this is them after they've been in the sprouter, which we showed you earlier. So you're typically in there for about 3 days, and then Mike soaks them in Milton before he feeds them to the birds. He does a selection of a mixed vegetable, it tends to be herbs, oregano, basil. He then does the Aviary Smart Advanced and the Aviary Smart Mix, as well as a dried egg food as well. He also varies the vegetables that he puts in. Tonight they're going to have fennel, beetroot and carrots. What Mike will not feed his birds is spinach. He will feed them kale and he'll feed them sweet corn, but he will never feed them spinach. I think there's something in there that affects the birds. So Mike's about to mix up his egg food mix for the birds tonight. So the egg food mix, followed by the sprouts. A handful of the herbs that goes in. This is from a Dutch company you might have just discovered. The Aviary Smart Advanced and the Aviary Smart Breed Curly Plus. I think you can get this readily available in Australia. So super products made by a chap that might know quite well, Kevin Ball. So grated carrot. Look at that concentration. Grated beetroot.
And I remove 40 bits in the morning.
So what I'm saying is that he'll feed this tonight, but then tomorrow morning he'll come out and he'll empty all of the crops. The reason for that, I think, is because it's so hot over here at the moment, he doesn't want any bacteria to grow and affect the birds. Next is fennel. We don't chop this about, as I said, it's just whatever. We have boiled oats going in, we have kale going in, there are bean sprouts going in. It's whatever we have available within the supermarket. Then mixes it up and then feeds it to the birds in the twin pot system that we have.
I'm sure there's a few people out there that will be very excited to hear that keeping it simple is going to help them be successful. Mike, your birds are extremely consistent in their features across the board. Can you tell us about your pair selection, the different families that you have, and how close you go with related birds? Do you aim to balance your pairings, or do you try and double up features? How do you do that? What works for you?
All of the pairings in the bird room are, I would say, at least 90% done on visual and obviously balancing out the pairings. I also have got, in my humble opinion, I've got 3 or 4 different features in the birds, and then I can always I always put down a few. I always put down a few pairs just to maintain some of the buffy feather, but I would say most of my pairings are all balanced out. And the most important thing about any person who breeds birds, you've got to know, and you've got to know your birds inside out, and you have to be aware of when you have bred a prepotent bird, because it's those birds, and you might only breed 4 or 5 in your lifetime. You might only breed 1, you might breed 10, you might be fortunate enough to breed even more than that, but they are the birds that propel you forwards. But I don't actively pair up, but rather to our sister and those sort of pairings, because quite simply, I think if you did that over generations, what you would do is that you would fix those points, and then if you wanted to improve that particular line of birds, it would be very difficult to. I do double up on some of the features of birds, but in the main, all of the pairs are balanced out. But I must emphasise to everyone, and I say it all the time, a lot of people don't take much notice of how the bird sits on a perch, and the feet position of the bird itself. In other words, the feet should be quite low, will actually improve the posture on the birds. And I tend to, or I hope to, make sure at least if one of the birds, the cock or the hen, or hopefully in both, the feet are positioned quite close, so the bird has a much better upright posture. But because the quite a few birds that I see now, where they've got the feet wide apart, their posture is absolutely awful.
Mike, thanks for that insight. I've got to ask the obvious question. What is the secret to your success?
Right, the secret to my success, I'm not sure if I do have any secrets. I think the most important thing for any hobbyist is to get their eye first. That is the most important part of the hobby, because it's not seeing. I mean, everyone can see an ounce, a super bird, but what it is when you're building up a stud, it's seeing the finer detail of birds. It's the smaller detail in the birds that makes that path to the best birds much easier.
Mike, I could see a little bit of nervousness at the end of that last statement there when I asked you about the secret of your success. I do have to warn you, I received this memo earlier today, and it says, Mike, if you don't say me and the kids, you're not getting lunch. So I want to apologise if you left hungry today. That wasn't meant to be a loaded question, but clearly you were in trouble.
So this is my program for movable flights. They're all separated out, so we have the young top, the young pen, breathing cages on the back. Those that are covered in plastic are just to protect, make it easier for cleaning. We separate two birds out, so these are young cockbirds in here. And you have separate slides for young hens. These are the ones that you can see the waiting to molt out and mature before he puts them in the breeding cage. As you'll see, these feeds some red millet. We're very lucky that we get this grown by a gentleman in France. He grows awesome French millet for us. The lipstone. Just a selection of some of the cocks that might waiting to become ready to pair up. These are some of Mike's favourite hens that we keep separate from the cock that are ready to pair up. You'll see some flex hens in there. Mike does keep some flex hens, he does breed from them. As long as he knows the background, he's happy to use them. And sometimes they bring out a little extra pop to his birds. Mike has a purpose-built kitchen with fridge, microwave, food processor, a boiler for hot water, sink, and plenty of storage. Food in seasons, and food products. These are the baby hens. Again, same setup as the previous slide. Drive and brush, products available from Alan Adams, we does export, I believe. Seed mixers, water drinker, and quick one.
Sarah, that's great. Thank you very much. I assume Mike's inside making himself lunch after getting to mention you before. Do you think you could show us inside of one of the breeding cages?
So this is one of my breeding cages. They're made from a German guy called Aviary. It's a product called asphalt, it's very easy to wipe down. Mike has the cages cleaned with antibacterial disinfectant once a week. The patches are cleaned And you can see down the bottom he uses newspaper. And the seed pots, he has two different types of seed that he uses. One is a budgie tonic and the other is budgie breeding. Both products are by BSSA-Budgerigar. We have the twin pots on the doors which contain the grit, and ultimately this one here we have the open as well. They have fresh water daily. They have an iodine block. And they have finger drawers, and we alternate what goes in those finger drawers. A variety of products. Tops the seeds up every single day. The foot tops go once a week. The finger drawers are done 3 or 4 times a week. At the moment, we've got Thrive and Gloss and Formosa. We use Fonio Paddy. Mike also uses a lot of the Ava Smart products, Brief Plus Pro and the Calcium Plus Pro. And every night she lotions his drinkers for 15 to 20 minutes. It's a sterilising product. Just find that it just adds to his drink. Mike uses a foster system. So we have a bank of foster papers here. The dots signify there's a centralised single dot. It means that the fosters have no gate. If there's 2 dots on the page, you can remove X from one of the better pairs, and you'll see we mark up the box of the recipient foster pair, where the eggs have come from, and we'll also mark up the other box to say where you use the eggs to. The bracket numbers and the dates of these eggs have been hatched.
Thank you, Sarah. Are you able to show us in Mike's bird room how he deals with ventilation? Obviously, all the birds are kept inside.
One of the things that Mike's very strong on is the extraction system. So we have an inlet here. And we have an outgoing fan here. But most of the dust seems to be generated. The fans are automated. They seem to go from 6 in the morning until 10, and then they go from 12 to 2, and then they go from 4 to about 9 o'clock at night.
Sarah, do you think after the old boy's done eating his lunch that he had to make for himself, that he might be able to show us a couple of his chairs?
Here's one of the pages that I have up at the minute. I would say, both the cock and the hen are on the limit, but that is for me an example of sometimes where I actually tear up a pair just to hold on to the extra little feather.
This is one of the baby cocks I bred last year. His dad, he's as good as his dad. Paired to a spangled grey green hen. Got fertile eggs. Not your run-of-the-mill pair.
Of the pairs that I have up at the minute, and if you look at the hen, all in the front of that there, nice. I think she's good. And I think he actually balances out the hen as well. If you look in, he isn't over the top. Although hens are on the limit, but
This is another of Mike's pairs. The Power Normal Grey is paired to a cinnamon. Mike's cinnamons have got a super feather, lots of really lovely soft down, really good pair. She complements him really well.
here's another pair of mine. I think it's reasonably balanced out, and it's of a slightly shorter feather. These are longer feather budgies. They balance out and show nicely. He's the father in the middle. And he isn't he's not one of my best birds, but he's the kind of bird that I was speaking about that's pretty much protected himself. Now, he's bred these sons on the right hand side, which is this one, and he's also bred this son on that side, another example of what I'm doing with different features as I was explaining. So I've set father to two different hens to achieve different features in both of the birds. So basically, in the next area that I will do, I'll have the best of both worlds. But the bird on the right is wonderful. I love the angle of this bird. 6 months old again, in the mould. It's really hot over here at the minute. Lovely style on this bird. Lovely angle as well on the back line. Needs a bit of long tail lengths. Yes. And if you can see, the reason why this bird sits up so nicely again is the feet. Arms at the back, and he's the sibling of his. In the mould in a minute, they look at they're really awful, but yeah, I'm really happy with the hope of the baby stock. They're better than the dad, I think, or they will be. And the tails are coming as well, so I hope all right. These are about between 5.5 and 6 months old, heavy in the mould at the minute, but they ought to hopefully make the grade. Rough in a minute, but yeah. But see what I was explaining earlier about the position of the feet. Position of the feet is most important for actually achieving the bird to have the posture. These are brothers. again that they had the same father, but I altered the hand. So I've got a slightly different feature on the back on the right to the more heavier bangle on the left.
This is a yellow-faced pied. I don't quite know what the prince is up to, but there you go. She's a lot more stylish than he is. We've got 4 front hollows in there. Today, some might use as a frosty system, and we've moved the first 2 eggs out, but more with the fertile. This is the recessive pied. He's one of Mike's favourite birds in the breeding team at the moment. She's quite a soft hen, but again, they complement one another very, very well.
Apologies to all the children watching who had to endure that. I'm not sure this was supposed to be a PG-rated docu-series on Mike and Sara Ball, but evidently, yeah, we can't help what nature throws at us. Mike, can you show us some budgies that aren't mating?
That is the deep budgie, so you can go one by yeah. One of the best birds, in my opinion, on the planet. Yeah. It's amazing, really amazing. Amazing in here.
There was certainly some fantastic budgerigars, and it was a privilege to be able to share them with you both. Mike and Sarah, I guess I speak on behalf of everybody here tonight watching when I say a very big thank you for your time and effort put into doing this and sharing your bird room remotely with the rest of the world. The COVID-19 situation isn't ideal, but I guess we're certainly making the best of a bad situation by being able to see aviaries like yours and Martin Halen's and others around the world during this time. So thank you very, very much. All right, that's it. I'm going to hand you back over to Chris.
Thanks, Troy. Did you want to take any final questions, Troy, or are we all going to do them all through the chat?
Let me, I'll just unmute Mike and Sarah. How did you guys go over there? Did you manage to get answers to most of the questions?
I think so, yeah. I think we were, as they came up, we were replying, but...
Yeah. Is there any more?
Yeah,
if there's any more, yeah, I'll answer away.
And I did see Michael Pace's question. I don't know that it was actually a question, but a statement that your birds are longer than Gary Gazzard. And I just wanted to clarify that that was not Gary's birds, that's Gary himself. So,
oh, yeah, I remember Gary.
he's on here having a good laugh, and I'm sure he's kick Pace.
He just made the table height, didn't he?
Settle down.
Yeah.
All right.
Make it come off.
Say that again.
He'd make a decent
Fly off.
number 9 scrum half. No, you're too smart for that nowadays. Sorry, I've got the 8 in stone.
Well, for anyone who does want to fire any questions off to Mike and Sarah, they've said they're happy to stick around and answer any if you want to fire them through the chat. If there aren't any more, we'll hand back over to Chris, and I think between him and Ian, they're going to have the Lucky Squares draw. Is that right, Chris?
Can we just say something actually, because I wanted to say something that I didn't say on the video yesterday, is that, you know, as a family, we've always supported Mike, and we've always travelled, sometimes not willingly, but we've always gone with him on a lot of his budgie trips, and we've met some really great people. We've had some amazing visitors, and there's a few faces on here that have visited us, and you know, we've made some really good friends sort of out of the hobby. But one of the things that Mike wanted to say sort of in conclusion was that, you know, you do need help from people, and
everyone needs help,
and he's been lucky enough that he has had a lot of help from the likes of Gerald, who, for those that don't know, he sadly passed away at the beginning of the year. Harry Hockaday, Daniel Lutoff. We were really lucky that Mike's brother moved to Switzerland and literally lived over the hill from Daniel. So we visited him quite a lot. So Keith Morehouse.
They've all contributed.
And we've also been lucky enough to visit some of, you know, some real legends in the budgie world, you know, the likes of Doug Sadler, Les Joy,
Alf Ormerod.
Alf Ormerod. That was before my time. Jim Hutton, Frank Silver, you know. So, you know, we've been lucky that Mike's travelled around and seen a lot of what's out there. And he always had a very clear vision from the beginning of the type of bird he wanted to breed.
Excellent, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So if there's no more chat questions, we've just got a couple of general business things before we wind up. Just look, I know I keep reminding people and I keep sending